All right, guys. So there's been a lot of videos going around recently discussing a tag topic. I haven't actually been tagged by anybody. Shame on you. I know I'm not that active in the retro. I'm not active at all in the retro community, so that's fair enough. But I would like to chime in on this. And the topic is retro games versus modern games. Um, I haven't actually watched a lot of the other responses. I've just seen that there are some going around. So I'm probably going to cover ground that's already been discussed, but perhaps one area won't be as commonly discussed. So yeah, obviously grew up 80s, 90s, loving all those games when they were current, of course, and carried on enjoying those old games through to fairly recently. Don't play a lot of retro right now, but it's certainly something that was a mainstay of my gaming sort of life over the last nearly 4 decades of playing video games. Um, and yeah, they remained appealing even through the sort of modern era because they offered, of course, that sort of pick up and play feel where you could jump straight into a game, an old game, and play for a short amount of time and pick it up really quickly and have a blast and have your fix and move on and feel like you've had a satisfying gaming experience. Whereas more and more modern games are just so huge, so bloated. Like people talk of 100 plus hours in a game just to see everything in it. These huge open world games, and it just became. It got to the point where I became bored of that sort of games. And obviously there's always been your shorter games, your arcadey games, your pick up and play games. There's always been a range of those. But if you're talking about the sort of flagpole, celebrated main kind of releases, the big sort of hyped releases, the majority of those in recent years have been these huge, sprawling uh, game worlds that not only take dozens of hours to sort of get through, but also they're so complicated. And if you stop playing these games for a little while, you might be lost when you try and go back to them. And that happened to me quite a few times. It's yeah, spending a few hours with a game, leaving it for a while, playing something else, getting distracted, whatever, and going back to it and just having no idea what I'm supposed to be doing, not remembering anything about the umpteen different sort of structures within the game, whether that be upgrading systems or whatever else. So it did become a little bit fatiguing. I did start to become bored of it, and by the time it got to PS4, I wasn't. I had no intention of buying a PS4. Like at that point, around PS4's sort of release, even halfway into its, I'd say 2 or 3 years into its lifespan, I was. I had no intention of getting a PS4 or a console from that generation, and I was going through my older stuff and spending a lot of time playing with the retro games and on 360 a lot. Some of the games I still hadn't played through on that, and so yeah, it got to that point where I was so kind of just bored with those and intimidated by those huge games. Uh, just wasn't doing it for me. And again, and even the games that weren't ridiculously long and huge, there was just such a lot of sort of repetition in terms of the style of games, and it did become. I became bored with modern gaming around that time. And what really brought me back in, it would be no surprise to anyone who's been watching this channel for a while, is VR. So what happened was I went round a friend's house. I had played a little bit of crappy, really crappy VR prior, but the first time it really jumped out to me as something that I was just about to become obsessed with. Whereas I went around a friend's house and played Battlezone on PSVR 1 and a couple of games on PC VR as well, and this, and it just a switch flicked, and I was like, this is this is a new dawn of gaming for me. Like it felt like a rebirth. Like I was excited about gaming, about modern gaming again for the first time in quite a while, and because it was just this alien experience, this just completely new way of appreciating the medium of video games, like actually being inside these games and having a physical presence within the games. Like just the simple thing of being able to look, move your head and look around and be inside these games. The 3D depth perception, more often than not, the hand presence. So you've actually got your arms in the game. So you've got this analog control over your arms and your hands in the game. It was just a revelation. And obviously it started slow. PSVR 1, there were some sort of drawbacks to it. Sony had sort of tried to, they'd had to cut corners here and there to make it financially viable. So there was a, restricted play area, light tracking, so you couldn't really turn around, otherwise you'd lose the tracking. But these were minor inconveniences when it came to the fact that it was giving me this brand new experience, and just absolutely blew my mind. And I have not looked back since. That was 2016, so just 8 years. My primary avenue for gaming has been VR, and it just keeps getting better and better. Now PSVR 2, better tracking, better resolution, better contrast, better colors, vibration in the headset, all these different immersive features, eye tracking. It's just everything has got better and better so quickly as well, because it's a new medium, a new technology that is very rapidly improving. So, if you're somebody that tried VR in the previous generation and thought, yeah, it's all right, it's not quite there, might be time to take another look, because it really has advanced very quickly. And it's also it's a special thing, because it's one of those things that if you've never actually tried VR, if you've never actually put a headset on and played a decent VR game, it's very hard to sell people on it just by like watching gameplay footage on YouTube, for example. It just does not do it justice. You watch a video of VR gameplay on YouTube, you don't have the 3D depth perception, which is such a big part of feeling like you're there, to have that shift in focus and feeling like you can feel the depth in a world. Um, and actually just being in there. Yeah, if you watch a video, you're not able to move your head around and interact like that. You don't know how it feels to actually have your hands in the game and all these other things that contribute to how immersive those games are. So it's it's not surprising that it's a slow burn in terms of converting people or convincing people that it's worth the time. Because yeah, you ain't gonna be seduced by watching video gameplay on YouTube or by people talking about it. So I can evangelize about this, about a VR, but you're not really going to get it until you've been in a headset and really felt the difference. But it was intoxicating. Yeah, and I think my attach rate, which is how many games you buy for any particular platform, my attach rate is, I think, a lot higher on VR than it was for sort of any flat screen console. Uh, you know, retro collecting notwithstanding, when you just go out and buy dozens and hundreds of games at bargain bin prices if you can manage it, and store them in boxes in your loft that you're never going to get around to. That aside, in terms of new releases, like my attach rate, the amount of new releases, of quite new releases, recent or new releases that I buy for VR is so much higher, because there is this pull to just see what it actually feels like to be in those worlds, because every VR game feels different. Whether it's the different ways that you can manipulate objects, different mechanics, different ways of movement, the different skills, different whatever. Every VR game feels a certain way, and there's this big pull to really get in there and actually see what it's actually like to be in those games, more so than, because with a flat screen game, you watch a review, you know what it looks like. That's what it looks like. That's the game. You watch a review, that's what it looks like. That's what will be on the telly when you buy it. So, but with VR, it's very different, because you need to get in there to really know what it's like, and this is also true of the basic looking games as well. Obviously, better graphics, high budgets, high fidelity VR games are more impressive, but even the lower budgets and simpler looking graphics can be awesome, very immersive. and very fun and impressive. And so that's another reason why, yeah, you watch reviews of VR games, and a lot of them are they look a couple of generations behind in terms of graphics, because the market leader at the minute is standalone Quest running off a mobile chip hardware, so it's obviously much lower power. So most of the games are first developed for that, and if you're lucky, they'll get upgraded a bit for on PC and PSVR 2. But even those basic games can be very immersive, very fun, very impressive. But yeah, on PSVR 2, my particular choice of VR headset, I have that because of the ease of use, and because every now and again you do get those higher fidelity, higher production values games, and when you get really good graphics, I hesitate to say lifelike, sort of more realistic graphics, high fidelity, then it's even more immersive. Like, it's just next level. So, and that's really where I am at the minute. And I don't play a lot of retro. I sold a lot of my collection. I still have a lot of it in the loft. If I do play retro these days, a lot of it's on emulation. I still play 3DS. Would you classify 3DS as retro? Maybe. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm at the minute. And I guess it's come round to just the idea of just wanting something that feels fresh, um, and it's exciting. And it's kind of ironic that I sort of held on to retro for so long, even though it's old, so you can't say that it's fresh. But the games felt, accessible, fun, pick up and play, easy to get into, um, and that's what keeps them being appealing, isn't it? Really, but yeah, that's my thoughts on this. Although nobody asked me for them, I would highly, if you get a chance to try out a decent VR headset somewhere, do it. And if you haven't before, certainly worth investigating. It's there is some barriers to entry, there is some friction, there is some awkwardness compared to TV gaming, of course. Um, the ideal VR setup is a 2 by 2 meter square somewhere in your house that's completely empty, and you can not monopolize, and that's not easy for a lot of people, especially if you've got partners and families and stuff. But it can be played sat down as well. Currently, I'm playing a game called Ancient Dungeon, which is like a dungeon crawler roguelite. So addictive. It's got like Minecraft looking graphics, but the gameplay is so smooth and responsive and natural feeling. Um, and the upgrade systems and the power ups are so compelling and interesting. It's very, very, very fun. And I play that sitting down mostly. Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts on retro versus modern gaming. I would have probably tapped out of modern gaming had it not been for VR. And so that's I only the first my first PS4 was a PS4 Pro. Not long after that came out, because it worked better with PSVR 1. Um, and if it hadn't been for that, I probably wouldn't have had a PS4, and I probably wouldn't have a PS5 now if there wasn't VR on it. Um, because yeah, I still have a huge collection of original Xbox games that I have never played up in boxes. And my plan was to get to those. It was looking like that's the way I was going when I felt like I was, not going to jump on board with PS4 for the first few years of that console's lifespan. At that point, I was like, yeah, I'm sorted for years and years here. I've got 350 original Xbox games. They haven't had a look in since VR came out, and yeah, that's me. So yeah, retro versus modern gaming. All right, guys, in a bit. Bye bye.